All right, everyone, get ready, because today we are taking a deep dive into Darren Aronofsky's The Fountain.
A fascinating choice, and one that I think will resonate with our listeners.
It's a film that tackles some really big questions, and does it in a way that's visually stunning and emotionally gripping.
It's not your typical Hollywood fare.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
So The Fountain tells a story that unfolds across three different timelines. We have a conquistador in the 16th century, a modern-day scientist, and a space traveler in the distant future.
And what's remarkable is how seamlessly Aronofsky weaves these narratives together.
Right, and each storyline explores different facets of the same fundamental themes: love, death, and the search for meaning.
And underpinning it all is this exploration of Buddhist philosophy, particularly the concept of samsara, the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth.
It's like the film itself embodies that cyclical nature. We see these characters grappling with the same desires, the same fears, across centuries.
And it's not just the characters. The film's visual motifs, like the Tree of Life, keep reappearing, connecting these seemingly disparate stories.
It's such a powerful symbol, the Tree of Life. It speaks to the interconnectedness of all things, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely, and it ties into the Buddhist concept of dependent origination, the idea that everything is interconnected, that nothing exists in isolation.
So even though we have these distinct timelines, they're not truly separate. They're all part of this larger tapestry.
Exactly, and I think that's one of the things that makes The Fountain so thought-provoking. It challenges us to reconsider our linear perception of time.
It reminds me of that famous line from the film, "Death is a disease, and there's a cure, and I will find it."
Such a powerful statement, and one that speaks to the protagonist's relentless pursuit of immortality.
Which, in a way, is a form of denial, wouldn't you say? A refusal to accept the natural order of things.
It's a very human impulse, though, to rage against the dying of the light, to cling to life even in the face of the inevitable.
And we see that struggle play out in all three timelines. The conquistador searching for the fountain of youth, the scientist desperately seeking a cure for his wife's illness.
And the space traveler journeying towards a dying star.
It's like Aronofsky is exploring this primal fear of death from every conceivable angle.
And yet there's also this sense of awe, of wonder that permeates the film.
Especially in those space scenes, they're breathtaking.
They are, and I think they speak to the film's ultimate message, which is that there's beauty, even transcendence, to be found in the face of death.
It's not about escaping death, but about understanding it as part of a larger cycle.
Exactly. And maybe, just maybe, finding liberation in that understanding. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's delve a little deeper into each of these timelines, starting with the conquistador's quest for the Fountain of Youth. What do you make of his story and how it sets the stage for the film's larger exploration of life and death?
Well, the conquistador story, it really sets the stage for the film's exploration of ambition, desire, this relentless pursuit of something that might ultimately be unattainable.
He's driven by this belief in the Fountain of Youth, this mythical source of immortality.
And it's not just about living longer, is it? It's about conquering death itself.
Right. It speaks to that very human desire to transcend our limits, to control our own destiny. But there's also a darkness to it. Oh, absolutely. The conquistador's quest is fueled by violence, by a kind of ruthless ambition.
Which is interesting because, in a way, it mirrors the scientist's story, don't you think? I mean, obviously, he's not out there conquering lands, but there's a similar intensity to his pursuit of a cure.
You've hit on something there. Both characters are so consumed by their goals, so fixated on finding a way to cheat death, that they lose sight of what truly matters.
It's like their desire for control for a specific outcome blinds them to the present moment.
Precisely. And that blindness, that inability to accept the natural order of things, ultimately leads to suffering.
Which brings us to the Buddhist concept of attachment as a source of suffering. Can you elaborate on that a bit? How does that concept play out in these stories?
Well, in Buddhism, attachment is seen as the root of suffering. It's this clinging to things as we want them to be, rather than accepting them as they are.
And in The Fountain, we see this attachment manifest in different ways.
Exactly. The conquistador is attached to the idea of conquering death, of achieving eternal youth. The scientist is attached to the idea of saving his wife, of finding a cure for her illness.
And in both cases, that attachment leads them down a dark path. It consumes them, isolates them, ultimately prevents them from finding true peace.
It's like they're so focused on the destination that they miss the journey. They miss the beauty of the present moment, the preciousness of the time they have.
Which is ironic because in their pursuit of more time, they end up wasting the time they do have.
A tragic irony, wouldn't you say? And one that I think speaks to a universal human experience.
It's so easy to get caught up in our desires, our fears, and lose sight of what's truly important.
It is, but The Fountain seems to suggest that there's another way. A path that doesn't involve fighting against the inevitable, but embracing it.
And that brings us to the space traveler's story. Here we have a character who seems to have reached a different level of understanding, wouldn't you say?
I think so, yes. He's no longer trying to outrun death, he's accepted it.
And there's a sense of peace, of transcendence that wasn't there in the other timelines.
He's surrendered to the cycle of death and rebirth. He sees the beauty in it, the necessity of it.
And visually, that's reflected in those stunning space scenes. The dying star, which could be seen as a symbol of destruction, is actually incredibly beautiful, awe-inspiring.
It's a powerful reminder that even in death, there's creation, that endings pave the way for new beginnings. And this theme of creation from destruction, it's woven throughout the entire film, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's in the way the tree of life grows and changes, shedding its leaves only to blossom anew. It's in the cyclical nature of the stories themselves.
And it speaks to a fundamental truth about existence, which is that everything is in flux. Everything is impermanent.
And that impermanence, which we often fear, is actually what makes life so precious, so meaningful. But we'll delve deeper into that idea in our next segment. So we've been talking about impermanence, this idea that everything is in constant flux. It's a concept that can be both beautiful and terrifying, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It's at the heart of so much of human experience, this tension between our desire for permanence, for control, and the reality that everything is always changing, always in motion.
And The Fountain really leans into that tension. We see
Yeah.
it in the protagonist's journey as he grapples with his own mortality, his wife's illness, the very nature of time itself.
And it's through that grappling, that struggle, that I think the film offers a profound insight.
Which is?
That true peace, true liberation comes not from fighting against impermanence, but from embracing it.
It's a radical idea, isn't it? To find freedom and letting go.
It is, and it's a concept that's deeply rooted in Buddhist philosophy. The idea that attachment, this clinging to things as we want them to be, is the source of suffering.
So if we can learn to let go of our attachments, to accept the impermanence of all things, we can find a different way of being in the world.
Exactly. A way of being that's not based on fear or grasping, but on acceptance, on presence, on appreciating the beauty of each fleeting moment.
It reminds me of that line from the film, I'm Not Afraid Anymore. It's such a simple statement, but so profound in the context of everything the protagonist has gone through.
It is, and I think it speaks to the transformative power of accepting impermanence. When we let go of our fear of death, of loss, of change itself, we open ourselves up to a whole new way of experiencing life.
We become present to the beauty that's always been right here in front of us.
Precisely. And that brings us back to the film's central themes of love and eternity.
Because even though The Fountain grapples with some pretty heavy stuff, at its core, it's a love story.
It is, and a testament to the enduring power of love, even in the face of death. But it's not a sentimental love story.
Definitely not. It's raw, it's messy, it's complicated.
Yeah.
Just like real life.
Exactly. And I think that's part of what makes it so resonant. It acknowledges the pain of loss, the grief, the fear, but it also suggests that there's something beyond that, something that transcends the physical.
And that's where the concept of eternity comes in.
I think so, because in The Fountain, eternity isn't about living forever in some kind of literal sense. It's about recognizing the interconnectedness of all things.
The way our lives, our loves, continue to resonate even after we're gone.
Exactly. It's about finding the eternal in the ephemeral, the infinite within the finite.
It's a lot to wrap our heads around.
It is, but I think The Fountain gives us a glimpse of that possibility. It invites us to consider a different way of understanding life, death, and everything in between.
To see the beauty in the cycle, the creation that arises from destruction.
And to find a different kind of immortality, one that's not based on fear or denial, but on love, acceptance, and the recognition that we are all part of something much larger than ourselves.
Wow. So as we come to the end of our deep dive into The Fountain, what's one thing you hope our listeners will take away from this conversation?
I hope they'll watch the film again, or perhaps for the first time, with a renewed sense of wonder and curiosity. And I hope they'll allow themselves to really sit with the questions it raises, to explore the themes we've discussed, and to come to their own understanding of what it means to live, to love, and to die in a world where everything is constantly changing.
Beautifully said. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey through the cosmos of the fountain. We hope this deep dive has inspired you to look at life, death, and maybe even a dying star with a fresh perspective. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the mysteries of the universe, both inside and out.
Hearts beat slow in time. Eternal paths we roam. Stars will guide us home. Lost in the cosmic rhyme. Whispers in the night air. Seek the fountain of youth. Timeless love's pursuit. Endless journey we share. In the quiet of trees, where the light softly gleams, mystery flows through streams. In the heart that's redeemed, fading echoes of the past. Silent vows we keep through the ages. We leave memory everlast, last. With the universe we sing. In awe we blink and gaze through the stardust maze. Mystic links we think. Cycles of life unfold. Wisdom from ancient lore.